Jack Holloway lived on the dry Texas plains, a cowboy hardened by years of solitude. His ranch was wide, his cattle strong, but his heart was empty. Townsfolk said he was too stubborn to marry, too rough for love. Jack didn't argue. He had long accepted loneliness as his fate. Far away, Mary Evans lived a life marked by whispers. Once married, she had been unable to bear children. Her husband abandoned her, her family ashamed, calling her a burden. To rid themselves of disgrace, they arranged for her to wed a distant cowboy she'd never met. Mary rode west with trembling hands clutching her bonnet. She expected rejection, perhaps cruelty. Infertile was the word stamped on her life like a scarlet letter. When the wagon stopped at Jack Holloway's ranch, she braced for ridicule, but instead she found a silent man. Jack stood by the corral, broad-shouldered, hat low against the sun. His eyes, though stern, held no cruelty. He tipped his hat. "You must be Mary." She nodded. "I am." In that moment, neither knew their lives were about to entwine in a way no one expected. The marriage was not born of romance, but arrangement. They stood in the small town chapel, vows spoken in hushed tones. Mary's heart beat fast, fearing the judgment in Jack's eyes, but he never once looked at her with pity. Only a quiet steadiness she hadn't known before. At first, their life was awkward. Mary cooked, cleaned, and tended the cabin. Jack worked the ranch from dawn till dusk. They spoke little, two strangers bound by duty. Yet each evening, Jack noticed her soft hands working, her quiet strength in every small task. Mary waited for the cruel words she had always heard. Barren, useless, unwanted. But they never came. Jack never asked about her past, never questioned her worth. He treated her as though she belonged, as though her presence was enough. One night, as the wind howled outside, Mary whispered, "Do you know why they sent me here?" Jack glanced at her, eyes calm. "I don't care why. You're here now, and that's what matters." Mary felt tears burn her eyes. No one had ever said she mattered. The days grew into weeks. Mary tended a small garden, filling the cabin with herbs and flowers. Jack, returning from the fields, found himself drawn to the scent of home she created. The ranch, once silent, now echoed with soft humming and the crackle of warmth. Slowly, Jack began to open. He spoke of his ranch, of cattle drives, of storms that shaped his life. Mary listened, her eyes full of understanding. She shared little of her past, but he never pressed. Trust, like seeds, was taking root quietly between them. When townsfolk came to call, they looked at Mary with thin smiles, whispering behind her back. Jack noticed. One afternoon in the general store, a man joked cruelly about Jack marrying a woman who couldn't give him a son. Jack's fist silenced the laughter. "Don't you speak of my wife that way," Jack growled. The store fell silent. Mary, standing nearby, felt her heart swell. For the first time in years, someone had defended her not with pity but with pride. That night, she cried softly in gratitude. Their bond deepened with each passing season. Jack began inviting Mary to ride with him. She learned to handle the reins, her laughter echoing across the prairie. Jack found himself smiling more, the sound of her joy filling corners of his heart he thought were dead. Mary discovered strength in ranch life. She herded cattle, mended fences, even stitched Jack's worn shirts with care. He marveled at her resilience. She was no burden, no shame. She was the backbone he didn't know he needed. One evening, as the sun bled into the horizon, Jack said softly, "You've changed this place, Mary. Changed me." She blushed, whispering, "I thought I was only sent here to be your disgrace." Jack shook his head. "You're the best thing that's ever come my way." Mary's fear of being unwanted began to fade. Each touch, each glance from Jack reassured her. He never looked at her as broken. He looked at her as whole, as precious. Slowly, love bloomed between them, not forced, not arranged, but real. Yet whispers in town did not stop. Women mocked Mary, hinting she could never give Jack an heir. Men offered false sympathy, telling Jack he deserved better. But Jack only smiled and said, "I already have better." His devotion silenced every rumor. One night, by the fire, Mary confessed her deepest fear. "Jack, I can't give you children." His eyes softened. Mary, I didn't marry you for that. I married you because you're you. I don't need a child to know my life has meaning. You've given me more than I dreamed. Mary wept in his arms that night, the weight of years lifting from her shoulders. For the first time she felt free. She was not defined by what she could not give. She was cherished for who she was. And Jack's embrace told her she was finally home. Seasons shifted. Trials came. A drought tested the ranch. Cattle thinned, and the land grew hard. But Mary stood beside Jack every step. She rose early, worked late, and never faltered. The ranch survived not because of Jack alone, but because of them together. Neighbors soon saw the truth. Jack and Mary's love was not fragile, but iron strong. They envied the quiet bond that made their cabin glow with warmth. Even on the harshest nights, slowly, whispers turned to respect, and respect turned to admiration. Though Mary never bore children, she became a mother in spirit. Orphans from town often visited, drawn to her kindness. She mended clothes, cooked meals, and taught them to read by the fire. Jack watched with pride, realizing she had given them a family greater than blood. One boy, left alone after his parents died in a storm, asked Jack if he could stay. Without hesitation, Jack and Mary opened their home. He's ours now, Jack told her softly. Mary wept with joy, cradling the boy. Their home, once empty, now echoed with laughter. Years passed, and the Holloway ranch grew stronger, filled with life. Jack, once a loner, became known as the Cowboy, whose wife gave him more than land, more than cattle. She gave him love, family, and a reason to rise each day. Mary was never a shame. She was his pride. As the sun set on another long day, Jack took Mary's hand on the porch. They sent you here to shame you, he said softly, but you became the only woman I'll ever love. Mary leaned into him, smiling through tears. For the first time in her life she believed it. Jack and Mary's days settled into a rhythm. He worked the herds while she kept the home warm and welcoming. At night, they shared simple meals, their silences no longer heavy but peaceful. Slowly, they grew from strangers into companions, their bond deepening in quiet ways. Winter rolled in with biting wind. Mary worried she wouldn't endure the harsh season, but Jack made sure the fire never went out, and that she never lacked comfort. She realized his care wasn't just duty, it was affection. Each gesture spoke of the love he couldn't yet voice. As snow blanketed the plains, the cabin became their world. They read by lamplight, shared stories, and laughed at small things. Mary found herself looking forward to the long nights, for within them she discovered the man behind the stoic cowboy. A man capable of tenderness. One stormy night, the roof began to leak. Jack climbed up into the freezing wind to patch it, but Mary followed, holding the lantern steady. You shouldn't be out here, he said. She smiled, teeth chattering. And leave you to face the storm alone. Never. His heart stirred deep. In town people still whispered about Mary, yet Jack never faltered. When asked why he stayed loyal to a barren wife, he answered simply, because she's my heart. The townsfolk learned to stop their cruel talk, for his devotion was unshakable and his love undeniable. Mary began to see herself differently. No longer a cast-off, she blossomed with purpose. The ranch thrived under her care. Flowers brightened the porch, meals brought joy, and Jack's home finally felt like a place of life, instead of lonely survival. The more Jack watched her, the more he knew she had healed something broken inside him. Where once his heart was shut, she had opened it with gentle hands and unwavering strength. Her presence was no mistake. She was his salvation. One summer evening, Jack brought her to the ridge overlooking their land. The sky burned orange, the cattle grazing below. This place was empty without you, he said softly. Mary's eyes glistened. For the first time she felt proud, not ashamed of who she was and where she stood. Though Mary couldn't bear children, fate gave them others to love. Orphans from nearby towns visited often. She cooked for them, taught them, and listened to their stories. Jack would watch her, heart swelling, realizing she was already a mother in the truest sense. When one boy lost his parents in a flood, Mary begged Jack to let him stay. Jack agreed without hesitation. He's ours now, he said. Together they raised him with love and care, their cabin ringing with laughter. Mary discovered motherhood beyond blood, and Jack cherished. Their adopted son grew strong under their guidance. He rode horses with Jack and read by the fire with Mary. The ranch became a beacon of warmth, proof that family is not measured by birth, but by love. Mary had become more than Jack's wife. She was his partner in all things. Over time, neighbors who once scorned Mary began admiring her. They saw the resilience, the kindness, the devotion. Jack and Mary's love had transformed not just themselves, but the community's perception of what it meant to build a family. Years of hardship tested them. Storms ruined barns. Droughts thinned the herds. But through it all they stood shoulder to shoulder. Mary never faltered, and Jack never let go. Together they proved that love was not fragile but forged in fire. One evening, Jack presented her with a handmade wooden locket. Inside was a sketch of the two of them with their boy. "You gave me a family, Mary," he said. Her tears fell freely as she clutched it to her chest, knowing he saw her not as barren but as abundant. The townsfolk soon told a different story, not of a shamed bride, but of a woman who transformed a cowboy's life. People sought Mary's counsel, children adored her, and neighbors respected her. The word infertile no longer defined her. Love had rewritten her name. Mary often reflected on how different her life had become. Once marked by shame and rejection, she now stood cherished and respected. Jack's love had given her back her dignity, and in turn her devotion had given Jack a reason to live beyond work and cattle. One night under the stars, Mary whispered, "I never thought I'd know happiness again." Jack pulled her close. "You're my happiness, Mary. That's all I'll ever need." His words, simple and steady, bound them more tightly than any vow ever spoke. The ranch flourished under their joint care. Jack handled the herds, Mary managed the household, and together they guided their adopted son. It became clear to everyone who visited that love, not bloodlines, made their family whole and strong. As the boy grew older, he began calling Mary Ma, and Jack Pa. The first time he said it, Mary broke down in tears, clutching him close. Jack's eyes misted too, for in that single word, the emptiness of his past years had been filled. Seasons changed again, bringing trial. A prairie fire swept dangerously close to the ranch. Jack and neighbors fought the flames, while Mary sheltered the boy and prayed. When Jack returned, exhausted but safe, she embraced him with a fierceness that spoke of love deeper than fear. In the aftermath, their community rallied around them. Neighbors rebuilt fences and barns, and Jack realized how much respect he and Mary had earned. Once pitied, now they were admired as a couple whose bond could weather any storm. Mary continued welcoming children into her home, each one left with a full belly, a kind word and a memory of comfort. To them she was proof that love wasn't measured in what you could give birth to but in how you cared with all your heart. Jack would often watch her with quiet awe. He remembered the woman who had arrived shy and fearful, expecting to be shamed. Now she stood proud, her eyes radiant, her spirit unbreakable. She was no castaway, she was the center of his world. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Jack surprised her with a small gathering. Friends, neighbors and children whose lives she had touched, filled the cabin. As lanterns glowed and laughter echoed, Mary realized she had been celebrated, not cast aside. Her heart overflowed. That night Jack told her, "They thought they sent me a woman to endure. Instead they sent me the love of my life." Mary kissed him, her tears falling freely, knowing his words were the truest gift she'd ever received. Their son grew into a fine young man, strong and kind. He worked beside Jack, helping with the cattle while Mary guided him with wisdom. Though not of her blood, he was fully hers, and she knew no greater joy than watching him thrive. When he eventually chose to marry, the young woman he brought home whispered to Mary, "Your son said you taught him what family means. I hope I can do the same." Mary smiled, realizing the legacy of her love would continue for generations. Jack and Mary's home became a gathering place, always filled with warmth, food and laughter. Their porch, once lonely and silent, now rang with children's voices and neighbors' conversation. The ranch had transformed into a living testament of resilience and love. Though whispers of Mary's past never fully disappeared, they no longer mattered. For every cruel tongue there were 10 voices praising her kindness. In the end, her life wasn't defined by what she couldn't do but by the immeasurable love she gave. One autumn evening, as they watched the sun dip low, Jack said, Mary, you've given me more than I ever thought possible. She leaned against him, replying softly, and you've given me a place to belong. That's all I ever wanted. The years continued to roll by, each one deepening their bond. Jack's hair turned silver, and Mary's face lined with time, yet their love only grew stronger. The ranch, once a place of loneliness, had become a sanctuary of joy and belonging. Mary often sat on the porch with her knitting while Jack worked nearby. Sometimes they said nothing at all, but their silence was full of peace. Every glance, every shared smile spoke of the life they had built together, born from pain but shaped by devotion. When grandchildren arrived, Mary's heart swelled. Though she had never birthed children, she now rocked babies in her arms, humming lullabies by the fire. Jack would watch, a smile tugging at his lips, knowing that fate had given them more than they had ever hoped for. Visitors marveled at the Holloway ranch. What began as a lonely cowboy's spread had blossomed into a home of legacy. People said Jack and Mary's love was stronger than steel, a story told in town as proof that true devotion could conquer all obstacles. On their 20th anniversary, their children and neighbors hosted a celebration. Lanterns hung from trees, music played, and the night rang with laughter. Mary, once the woman shunned, now stood in the center of admiration, her name spoken with honor. Jack raised a toast that night, his voice thick with emotion. They sent Mary to me as if she was a burden, but she became my blessing. She is my heart, my partner, and the only woman I'll ever love. The crowd erupted in cheers and Mary wept openly. As the years passed, they faced hardships, as all couples do, sickness, loss, and storms. But through every trial they held each other tight. Jack's steady hand and Mary's gentle spirit carried them through, proving again that their bond was unbreakable. One winter evening, Jack grew ill, his strength faltering. Mary cared for him tirelessly, sitting at his bedside, holding his hand. "You've given me a life worth living," he whispered weakly. "Promise me you'll never doubt your worth." She nodded through her tears. When Jack recovered, he often told others how Mary had saved him, first from loneliness, then from despair. "She's the reason I'm alive," he'd say with a proud smile. Mary would blush, but deep down she knew it was true for them both. Together they grew old, surrounded by family and friends. The ranch became a place of stories, its walls echoing with laughter and memory. Mary, once branded with shame, had become the matriarch of a legacy built on love and resilience. In the quiet of their later years, Jack and Mary often sat by the fire, hand in hand. "Do you ever regret the life we had?" Mary once asked softly. Jack smiled. "Not for a sec. You were the greatest gift I ever received." Her eyes glistened with gratitude. When Mary's health began to fail, Jack stayed at her side as she had once stayed at his. He cooked her meals, read her books, and whispered the same words he had said long ago. "You're not a bird, you're my heart." Her smile, even in pain, was radiant. In her final days, she looked around the cabin filled with photographs, laughter, and love. "They sent me here to shame me," she whispered, "but you turned my life into a blessing." Jack kissed her hand, his tears falling freely. "And you turned mine into love." After she passed, the town honored her memory. They spoke not of the woman who could not bear children, but of the wife who gave her husband happiness, the mother who raised a family with love, and the matriarch whose kindness touched every soul she met. Jack lived on with her memory, watching sunsets from their porch, often whispering her name to the wind. He carried her in every heartbeat, knowing that love like theirs never died. It simply lived on in the lives they touched and the family they built together.